Stampers, and welcome to Laura's Stamp Pad. Today I'm going to show you a one-sheet wonder for holiday cards. I know that this time of year you want to get those cards in the mail as soon as possible, but it's also a very busy time of the year, so there might not be a lot of extra time for crafting. So this one-sheet wonder actually uses a piece of designer series paper, which is from the Home for Christmas Designer Series paper pack from the Holiday Mini Catalog. So you can see that one side is the trees and the presents, and the other side is this fabulous blue and white. Some of the other ones in the pack are the fabulous little Santa with stripes on the back side. There's the little holly with some musical notes, and the little Bambis or little reindeer, whatever you want to consider that. They're absolutely adorable, with some holly on the background or backside, and then some cute little trees in snow with poinsettias on the background. So you could really do lots of one-sheet wonders with any of the sheets in this paper pack. And then you have all of your Christmas cards done with one 12 by 12 designer series paper pack and a little bit of extra card stock. So I made these 13 cards very quickly, very simple. And for the greeting, I actually used the same greeting, which is from the Peaceful Pines stamp set. So that's this one here. I used this greeting up here, stamped it on some scrap vanilla, and then I punched it out using the decorative label punch, which is this one here, my favorite for greetings. And so I just punched those out, punched out some scraps of the same coordinating colors, and cut that in half. And then let's push those aside for a second. Add a little bit of snail adhesive to the top and the bottom of the greeting, and then just layer that with a little bit showing out the top and a little bit showing out the bottom. And then you have your perfect little greeting, and I added that same greeting with that same way to all of my cards to quickly get them done so I could get them in the mail. So let me show you how to cut your 12 by 12 piece of paper for your one-sheet wonder. Okay, so here I have my Stampin' Trimmer with my sheet of one-sheet wonder, which is from the Home for the Holidays, so it's that same blue with the Christmas trees. And our first cut is going to be, and I want my trees to be right side up, so they're gonna go like that. So my first cut is actually going to be at 5.5. So I'm gonna do 5.5, and then my next one is going to be at 4.5. So now I have a 2" by 12, a 4.5 by 12, and a 5.5 by 12. We're going to set those other two aside, and we're going to focus on our 5.5 by 12. So now we're just going to make cuts going along the piece here. So we're going to do at 4.25. So now this is 5.5 by 4.25, and there's our first one. The next one is at 2.25, so that is 5.5 by 2.25. The next one is 2 inches, so that's 5.5 by 2 inches. The next one is 1 3/4, so that's 5.5 by 1 3/4. And then the last piece is actually 1 3/4, and so you can either leave it as 1 3/4, or you can trim it down to 1, or you can trim it down to 1.5. Whatever you would like. For the sake of this, I'm just going to go ahead and leave that there so that I don't have that little 1/4 inch or little piece left over. I'm just going to use it all. So that's the first set. Now we're going to bring in our 4.5 by 12 piece. And our first cut is going to be at 3.5. So this is 3.5 by 4.5. The next one is 1.5. And we're actually going to take this piece and trim it down to 4.25. So we're just going to nip off just a little piece there. So this one measures 1.5 by 4.25. The next one is also at 1.5. And we're going to trim this one down to 4 inches. So it's going to be 1.5 by 4 inches. The next one is going to be at 2 inches. So right now it's 2 by 4.5, but I'm going to cut it at 4 inches. So it's going to be 2 by 4. And the next one is going to go at 2 inches. And this one I'm going to cut into 2-inch squares. So I'm going to do a 2x2 and another 2x2. And so we have a little piece left over. And then the next one is 1.5 by 4.5, and I'm going to cut this into 1.5-inch squares. So that's 1.5 by 1.5, 1.5 by 1.5, and the third one is 1.5 by 1.5. Now, of course, all of those you could leave at the 4.5 and not actually do the little pieces cut off, but it's just kind of added to the card a different way, and you could always trim off little pieces as you use it. Now this last piece, in my template I actually don't really use this, but in the season of wanting to use as many cards or create as many cards as I could, I went ahead and just cut this into 5.5 strips. So I did 5.5, and then of course it's too tall, so 5.5 by 2, because that's the size of my regular card, and then another 5.5 by 2, and then this piece I actually tossed to the side as well. So now I'm just going to bring back in those samples and show you that this, because the cards are all 5.5 by 4.25, so that's where you're starting to see the 5.5 and the 4.25 come in a lot. And you could either go all the way, or you could go to 4 inches this way, and then you have like a little trim. So these are all of those long pieces. Then that very first piece that I cut is this one and this one, only I ripped it, and then, so you can see it actually was like this. I ripped it and then used it corner to corner on 2 separate cards. So that was that very first piece that measured 4.25 by 5.5. And then here's another one of those long pieces. There's a lot of those throughout this, this set. Then this is that big 3.5 by 4.5 piece, and I just happened to get lucky where that tree looks kind of centered, so I went ahead and did it on that side. Otherwise, you could always do, whoop, that's upside down, do it like that too. So, you know, it just kind of depends on which one you prefer, which color you prefer, which style and pattern. And then you'll see these are those little 4.25 pieces. And some of them are a little wider than others. And then there's those 2 squares, those 2x2 squares. And actually the 1.5 by 1.5 piece, the little 3 squares that I cut on this time, I actually left that at 4.5 by 1.5, and that is, or I mixed it down to 4.25, and that's this piece here. So you can always mix it up and not cut the little squares and leave them as long pieces, or leave them, you know, as a full piece that goes all the way to the edge, or a piece that has a nice little green border all the way around it. So, you know, you can kind of pick and choose how much you want to cut off on that when you go along. All of the colors of the cardstock that I used were Mint Macaron, Real Red, Pool Party, Mossy Meadow, and Very Vanilla. So I was able to make all 13 of those cards fairly quickly with all of those colors, and I pulled out my scrap bags as well to use for the greetings and for some of like the little borders here. Like for example, this one, you don't need to actually have a large piece of green, the Mossy Meadow. Instead, you could just do little strips of Mossy Meadow on either side to border that. So it saves cardstock and uses up your scraps and is very quick and simple. I hope you enjoyed this One Sheet Wonder tutorial, and like I said, I'll leave links down below to all of the other One Sheet Wonders that I have done too. So I hope you enjoy it. Let me know if you try this out or what your favorite pack of cardstock is for doing the One Sheet Wonder. I would love to hear what you have to say. Until next time, happy stamping. Bye-bye.